I'm joined now by Wardah Khalid. She's a Middle East policy analyst and media associate for Church World Services Immigration and Refugee Program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, in recent years, there have been just as many, if not more, hate crimes against Jews than Muslims, but it seems to go back and forth. Are we just hearing more about one group than the other, depending on what's happening in the world?
I think both groups are being affected right now, and in fact, minorities in general are being affected. And this is something that we saw starting with the campaign trail. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that anti-Semitism has been around for decades. Anti-Muslim rhetoric has been around for about since 2008 or so, since the Obama first ran for office. And so since then, it's just kind of cyclical. It'll rise with the elections. It'll fall in between. But this is nothing new. And this is part of a larger movement by right-wingers or people who are not fans of minorities and perpetuating this rhetoric.
And we saw in the piece, you know, the 9/11, September 11th attacks. And now it appears we're seeing more following President Trump's election. Why does it seem that certain events inspire these acts, or that they validate people's actions?
I will say that with the election of President Donald Trump, a lot of people felt that it was okay to kind of act out on what they were initially feeling, but never felt comfortable enough to act out. The fact that the president, retweeted anti-Jewish statements on Twitter, that he said that there should be a total and complete shutdown on Muslims entering the United States, this emboldened people. People felt comfortable enough to say what they had been thinking. So I think it goes to show that there's not only a problem with the rhetoric that we're having, but there's also a problem with the heart and soul of America. There's a large population or a certain population of Americans that harbor these anti-Muslim or anti-Jewish feelings, and we need to address that, and we need to educate and work to find out why is this happening and help change that.
And as we mentioned, that he has been criticized for responding very slowly to some of these things. He finally came out during the joint session of Congress, spoke out against it. What else does he need to do? What do you want him to do?
There are several things that I would like him to do. I think it's finally a relief that he spoke out against anti-Jewish crimes and anti-Jewish sentiment, but it's not enough. What is he actually doing about it? And he has yet to say anything about the rise in anti-Muslim hate crimes. So first of all, I would like him to acknowledge that and condemn that. And then I would like him to send a message to the American people that this is not going to be tolerated, that hate against any minority or any group is not going to be tolerated, and these hate crimes will be prosecuted to the fullest extent under the law. And also, I'd like him to work on the terminology. He keeps using the phrase radical Islamic terrorism, in which he automatically ties Islam to terrorism. Islam does not equal terrorism, and we would hope that our president would recognize that and acknowledge that and tell that to the American people. So when you're using phrases like that, you're doing exactly what ISIS wants. They want to build a divide between the West and Islam and show that Islam and the West or Islam and the US are not compatible. And that's exactly what people who use this phrase are doing. So I would like him to stop using that phrase.
When it comes to the federal government, individual states, are they doing enough to combat hate crimes? Because it is difficult to get something classified as a hate crime. What more needs to be done, and what can Muslims do to protect themselves?
Yeah, I think that absolutely more needs to be done on the federal level, on the state level, in recognizing something as a hate crime. It should not take forever to recognize, or shouldn't be so difficult to recognize something as a hate crime. When something is clearly a hate crime, it needs to be recognized as such, and the perpetrator needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent under the law, and it needs to make sure that the penalties are harsh for that, because this affects people's lives. People are dying, mosques are being vandalized, Jewish cemeteries are being desecrated. This is not okay. As far as what Muslims can do, I think that it's really important for people to learn how to protect themselves. There has been a rise in Muslim women signing up for self-defense courses, and this is a direct result of the fact that they are people who are visibly Muslim, whether they're perceived to be Muslim or they're actually Muslim, whether they wear a headscarf or a beard or a turban. They are more likely to get attacked. And so I think it's important that they learn how to protect themselves and also reach out and educate other people in their communities. Most Americans don't actually know a Muslim, yet people who do know a Muslim have a much higher perception of Islam and Muslims. So I think it's important for Muslims to get out there and meet with their neighbors and show what Islam really is about. And it's not what you hear on the news or you might see in the movies. And it's not what you're hearing the president talking about radical Islamic terrorism. So I think there's a multifold approach to be taken there. And it's going to take a lot of work going forward.
All right, Wardah Khalid, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.